is all the stuff you need to make a gallon of wine. You've got a primary fermentation vessel. I think this is 7-gallon one with a lid. It's got a bung for an airlock there. You're going to need your secondary fermentation vessel. You'll need a plastic spoon. You'll need a funnel, a graduated cylinder. These two things are optional because you can get recipes that just tell you how much sugar to add. This is how you determine how much sugar your wine has in it. They call it the specific gravity. So you can use one of these to get a custom specific gravity, or you can just use a recipe. These are my two juice concentrate. The one on the left is blackberry, actually dewberry, which is a similar species to blackberry. And the one on the right is actually wild Mustang grapes with a little bit of blackberry juice in it, just for added flavor. This is yeast nutrient. This is calcium carbonate. This is required whenever you're making wine from wild grapes with a really high acid content, which Mustang grapes do. This is an airlock and a bung. These are Camden tablets. That's for sterilizing all of your equipment, and also for sterilizing a must. And a must is a mixture of your fruit or your juice concentrate and the yeast nutrient and the yeast usually, but you don't put the Camden tablets in the must whenever you have already added your yeast. These are the yeasts that I use. This one here is a basic. It's a let's see if I can pronounce it. Burgovan RC212, and this is the one that's recommended for Pinot Noir and fruit wines. And this is the one I primarily use, which is a Lalvin EC1118, and you can use that for basically anything. It's a champagne yeast. French oak cubes. Those will be added after primary fermentation is complete. Actually, after all of the fermentations are complete, those are added. And I didn't mention the pectic enzyme. You use pectic enzyme with fresh fruit and juice, depending on what type of fruit or juice you're using. Since I'm using the blackberries, which have a lot of pectin in them, I'll be putting a little bit of pectic enzyme in there, and the pectic enzyme just eliminates the pectin, which is like I believe it's a protein, and it can cause cloudiness in the wine. And you'll need a gallon of distilled water if you're going to make a gallon of wine. So let me show you how I do it. I'll set the camera over here. See everything. Yep. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take my secondary fermentation vessel, and I'm going to add my juice concentrate to it. And all this stuff has already been sterilized. I did that before I started the video. And the reason I'm adding it into the secondary fermentation first is so I can measure out, basically, that's all it's for, just so I can get pretty close to a gallon. So let's add that in there. It's got a really deep red color. It looks almost identical to blood, actually. It's kind of cool. All right, and that came from 15 pounds of dewberries or blackberries. Technically, they're dewberries. And now we're going to add water and fill to not quite a gallon. because we still have to add a lot of sugar and other stuff to this. Having an overflow here. That's probably pretty close right there. Depending on how much sugar we have to add, we may have to add a little bit more water to fill to exactly a gallon. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the primary fermenter, and then we're going to add sugar, and then we're going to test the specific gravity. We're going to be shooting for a 15% alcohol by volume wine, so we'll add enough sugar to give us that amount of alcohol. Now we're going to test the specific gravity. Actually, I'll need another cup to ladle it out of there. I'm going to go ahead and sterilize this since it wasn't sterilized before with some Camden tablet solution. Like I said, this is optional. If you get a recipe or a wine kit that already has everything you need in it, then you just put it together the way it tells you to, and then the alcohol content will be very close to whatever it's designed to be. Let's check, see if we've got enough in here. We're on the bottom. So right now it's saying we have bubbles are interfering. Okay, there it is, alcohol by volume. So if we fermented this juice out the way it is, we would have 2% alcohol by volume. So that's like, you know, less than beer. So we're going to put it back in here and then add sugar and mix it. And we'll use the same cup to add the sugar. Let me rinse it off. And you can just use regular sugar, you can use natural sugar, or really any kind of sugar that's natural sugar. Usually I have to add about between 5 and 10 pounds of sugar, depending on what I'm using. These dewberries typically have a little more sugar naturally than some of the wild grapes, so we probably won't have to add quite that much. So we'll just leave it right there for a second and see what we end up with. Oh, we gotta mix first. That smells really good. And the key is to just make sure you mix it till it's fully dissolved. If you only, if you partially mix it now, and then whenever you measure the specific gravity again, if there's any sugar still sitting at the bottom, your reading won't be accurate. You could wind up with a sweet wine, or you could wind up with a wine that has more alcohol in it than you intended to have. You guys wouldn't believe the color of this. Let me show you this. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? Okay, that should be pretty good. So I'm using, like I said, 15 pounds of dewberries approximately. Most blackberry and dewberry recipes call for 3 pounds for 1 gallon. So this is like really rich. It's going to be a very, very, very full-bodied wine for a blackberry wine, which is what I like, and it's just fun. The good thing about winemaking is you can do whatever you want. There's no real wrong way to do it. It's all to taste. So you can see that's floating a little higher now. Let's see what we've got. So now we're at just above 5% alcohol by volume once this was fermented to dryness. So we added, I think, 5 or 6 of those, and we want to get up to 15% alcohol by volume, so we'll probably add, let's just add another 10 more scoops, and then see where we're at after that. Actually, I'm getting better scoops than I was last time, so let's just do 5 and then we'll measure it and see what happens. We don't want to go over. If we go over, we'll have to dilute it down with water, and it'll reduce the body of the wine, so we don't want to do that. Okay, we're back on. The camera died, so I had to get a different battery. But anyway, I just got through mixing that sugar in, so we're gonna test it. I just went ahead and did 5 scoops because the scoops were a little larger, and I don't want to go over. See the bubbles. So right now we're at 12% alcohol. So we need just a little bit more. So we went from 6 to 12 with 5 scoops, and now we got to get to 15. So we'll just add 3 more scoops and see if that does it. Should be pretty close. Rinse out the measuring cup again. let's test it again and see what we get. Notice how it floats a little higher each time. Okay, so that's pretty good right there. We're at 15. Let's see. It's basically %15.5 alcohol by volume, so that's perfect. Because we might have to add just a touch of water whenever we siphon it off of this into our secondary fermentation vessel. Perfect. So we're going to keep just a little bit of this this juice out. It's cool, huh? Look at that. Can't get it to swirl. Anyway, we're going to use it to start our yeast, and we're going to use the Bergoven RC212. Can you see that? That's the way it looks. That's the one that is primarily used for Pinot Noirs and other fruit wines, and it only ferments up to, most of them say on the back, I think it ferments probably up to between 12 and 15% alcohol. Let's see. It doesn't tell me. We'd have to probably look it up. Anyway, this is enough to do 5 gallons, so we're just going to use half of it, and I'll show you the way we do that. We will get we'll just use this little soup bowl. We'll sterilize it. What we're going to do is we're going to put the juice in here, and then we're going to add the yeast on top of it. A lot of people will use diluted juice, just so the yeast isn't introduced into such quite a harsh environment, because the acidity of this and all the sugar and stuff, it sometimes will delay the yeast from becoming active. But I haven't had a problem, so we're just going to put the yeast right in it. So let's see. I'll show you how to do that. That's about half a bag right there. This is how it looks. And you just leave it like that. It'll float like that for a little while. It'll start to hydrate, and then you might see a little bit of bubbles or even a foam develop on top, and then when that happens, you add it into the must. And this is now considered must. So I'm going to turn this off, and we'll wait for maybe 20 or 30 minutes until the stuff gets hydrated, and then we'll go back to doing it. Alright, it's been about 20 or 30 minutes since I put the yeast starter in. And I forgot to mention that you should probably keep everything covered, including the must, while you're doing all this, because or at least while you're not working on it, while you're waiting for yeast to get ready, just to keep floating mold or wild yeast or whatever bacteria out of there. Just kind of keep it covered until you're working with it. That'll keep your stuff from spoiling. Let me show you what it looks like. You can see that it's all sank kind of into the juice, and if you look right around the edges of the liquid, you can see that those are yeast cells that have rehydrated and kind of started to swell up. You can see a few in the middle too. That foam that you see is actually carbon dioxide that the yeast is producing as it's already eating the sugar. And the stuff gets going pretty quick. So this is ready to add to the wine. So we'll just pour this in there, and then we'll mix it up. Actually, it's must right now, but the crazy thing is, as soon as you add this in, whoop, now it's wine. Technically, we just made wine. So, yeah, most of it came out there. Now we just mix it up. How beautiful that is. Isn't that awesome? Voila, wine. Now all we have to do is prepare the airlock and then put the airlock on, and then let it sit for 30 days or so in this container, at least until it stops with the violent fermentation. And the violent fermentation is, the yeast is gonna be acting on the sugar. It's gonna bubble up quite a bit. It'll actually look like it's boiling in there at room temperature. So once that ceases and it kind of settles down to a simmer, that's when you put it in the secondary fermenter or the carboy. So we can just put the lid on this. I should mention, you don't want to use just any old bucket. You want to go to a wine store and get a real fermentation bucket, because regular buckets that aren't food grade plastic, they will have they could leach carcinogens and stuff into the wine and make it taste like plastic, and it's unhealthy. So make sure you use a food grade bucket, or just go to the wine store and buy a fermentation vessel. Fruit fly. Smells like good juice. So this is the airlock that I use, and all this does is it keeps any air from getting back into this container. All you have to do is fill them up to the line with the Camden tablet solution, and that's it. And then you just stick it in the hole. That's all she wrote. Just put it on there and it's good to go. There it is. Now we just let this sit. You want to check it every day or every couple days just to see how it's coming. You can look in the bucket, and if you see anything weird going on, like if you see any green around the edges, or if you see any white spots on it, if you catch something like that very early, you can stop the fermentation. You can add Camden tablets to it and kill off whatever it was that started in there But I mean, you have to catch it really, like, you got to catch it pretty much the same day it starts happening, and then you can start it back up again with another yeast. Luckily, these yeasts are pretty fast acting, especially the EC1118. It's really fast yeast. It ferments like real quick. We're using this one, which is pretty good still, but not quite as good as the EC1118. The other thing that might be helpful is whenever you're making wine, to keep a log of what all you do. So this one, it's just Dewberry Wine, the date that I made it, and then what all you went into it and anything that stood out or any notes that you want to keep. I like to put what I started with, which was juice concentrate. Pardon my handwriting. From 15 pounds. And then whatever type of yeast you used. So we're going to put this one on here. And what else? What else stood out? Oh yeah, so the alcohol by volume. We're going to make this one to 15%. Alcohol by volume. And I'll note the color was a very deep red. Cool. And then this will help you if you ever want to try to replicate it and make it exactly the same way. You can do it again with these notes. And I'll do a follow-up video of the fermentation tomorrow. It should be going pretty good by tomorrow. And then I'll do like an updated little video through each step. The racking, putting it into the secondary fermenter, putting the oak in it, and all of that. That way you guys can see that if you're interested. All right.